Empower to Integrate, a collaborative initiative by Aditus Foundation and the African Media Association Malta. This program is dedicated to advancing integration and social inclusion for third country nationals in Malta. It is funded by the Asylum, Migration and Integration Fund, co-funded by the European Union and carried out in collaboration with the Parliamentary Secretariat for European Funds.
Welcome to the Empower to Integrate project. This is a platform for third country nationals to boost their visibility, amplify their voices, and share their perspective. It also aims to strengthen community empowerment and build social ties in Malta. Hello and welcome. I'm Nesli Mayu and I'm the project lead strategist and radio show host. Today we will be discussing women are there to serve the needs of the family and the man. We will delve deeper into common family dynamics and expectations, both in the home and in the workplace, as well as traditional views on gender roles, with the woman expected to prioritize family life over their careers, as men are seen to be the main providers. We will also look at the perception of people thinking that migrant women are treated badly by their partners and how to eradicate misogyny and femicide in a way that we can gain more support from authorities and civil society. Joining me in the studio today is Ibtisam Sadesh. Hello and welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Ibtisam is a lawyer and lecturer at the Civil Law Department of the University of Malta and coordinator of the University of Malta Law Clinic. In 2023, she obtained a PhD in anthropology from the University of Amsterdam. Her PhD is an ethnographic dissertation on the celebration and the problems of interreligious couples that may be faced in the Spanish enclave, a place which also borders Morocco. In 2013, she obtained a Doctor of Laws at the University of Malta. For her law thesis, she conducted a comparative research between the ecclesiastical tribunals in Malta and Sharia councils, Muslim Arbitration Tribunal and the Beth Din, which are Jewish tribunals in England and Wales. Her research interests include mixed marriages, religious identities, migration, minority communities, and intersecting normativities. Ibtisam, based on your research into interreligious and mixed marriages in places like Spain and Morocco, how do migration and cultural diversity shape expectations around family roles within couples today?
So that's a very good question. I think in every research relating to family dynamics, one has to take the particular context. So when we conduct research in anthropology, it's really important that we determine what is the context where we're doing that research. Now, in my case, having done research in Ceuta, which, as you rightly pointed out, it's a Spanish enclave and it's sharing a border with Morocco. So it is part of the European Union and it's at the same time in Africa. It is a very particular context, right, where we are studying mixed marriages, and my research focuses on mixed by religion, but I did understand that also many of the mixed couples were also mixed by nationality. So you would have a Spanish husband married to a Moroccan woman. Now, in my study, I did realize that the couples, they were representing their communities. So they were not seen as their marriages being an intimate affair, something that is private, which is what one would expect when we discuss marriage. But in Ceuta, they were also representing their communities. So if the wife is Muslim, she was not seen simply as the wife, but she was seen also as a Muslim wife, right? As a Moroccan woman, so as a North African woman, not just as a woman or the wife in the marriage. And the husband was also seen as representing their communities, their religious communities, their ethnic background. So that's a big responsibility when you go into marriage and you're not seen simply as a normal couple, but you are seen as representing a whole community. And your decisions are going to be judged by the people around you. So take, for example, if you're having children, what religion are you going to raise your children? What type of food is allowed inside the house? What type of festivities are being celebrated? So it's a lot of responsibility when these couples are perceived by the society. Now, of course, that means that everything inside the house and between the couple is part of negotiation. And that is, in reality, every couple. So every couple, when they go into marriage, they need to negotiate, right? They need to negotiate their views, their ideas, their opinions, because they're not, we don't marry exactly us, right? And even if we did, we still will have issues if we married a copy of who we are. But that's even more important when you're studying a mixed couple. So I think in those circumstances, they need to renegotiate their expectations, but also family pressures, political pressures, where the politics of where they live also sees them as a mixed couple and also considers border issues, right? So when you have someone who is considered as third country national marrying an EU national, already you have all these political questions. Is it a marriage of convenience? Right? So these couples do have to renegotiate in their everyday life once also they're married. So it's not just until they get married, but even during marriage. Yeah.
That's quite interesting to see how you've explained it in terms of not just being two, but with the community as well. And how do traditional gender expectations affect migrant women, where they're still expected to prioritize caregiving and family responsibilities over professional ambitions?
Yes, they did. In my study, I did find that many of the couples, the wife was the migrant in that relationship, which is very interesting because that's not the case in every context, right? I've read about other contexts where usually it's the husband who is the migrant. Take, for example, the context of Malta. Usually we have more male migrants than female migrants coming to Malta. So obviously the number of marriages will probably with locals would probably reflect the number of migrants and their gender. Now, in the context of Ceuta, I found that many of the mixed marriages, it was the wife who was the migrant. Now, in my research, I have concluded that the reason why this was happening, why there was this such large discrepancy in the numbers between female migrants marrying, in this case, Spanish men versus male migrants from Morocco marrying Spanish women, is because of the hierarchical differences. So when a woman, Spanish woman, gets married to a Moroccan man, they would be seen by Ceutans as having married down. So in the contrary, when you have a migrant woman marrying when you have a migrant woman marrying a Spanish man, she would be seen as marrying up. So what I've realized is that the woman actually would move to the class of the husband, and it's never the other way around. So this shows that there's a hierarchy where male in general are seen to be more dominant, and that is reflected in what type of marriages are considered desirable, which types of marriages are problematized as being a problem. In fact, in my research, I saw that if a Moroccan man marries a Spanish woman, they would say he's gonna now convert you to Islam. He's gonna lock you in the house. You'll never see your family again, right? It's not to say that the other way around was not problematized. When a Moroccan woman marries a Spanish man, they would say, maybe they would question, her religiosity. How religious is she to marry a Spanish man? And even if he converted, they would still question it. So women have it harder either way. In conclusion, yeah. But yes, but which types of marriages are considered desirable really reflects this hierarchy, where men in general are considered more in a position of power.
And from your academic and legal perspective, how accurate or problematic is the perception that migrant women are more vulnerable or more likely to experience these unequal relationships?
Yes, I think it. So, from my academic experience, because many of the migrants were the women, it is hard to provide an accurate conclusion as to whether migrant men would have the same level of vulnerability. However, also from my experience as a lawyer in Malta, I do realize that migrant partners in general, because they are the third country national coming, whether it's to Malta or to Ceuta, the fact that they don't have an equal legal status, the fact that they depend on the national their spouse in regards to residency, that puts them in a position of vulnerability. Now, in general, we know that there is this dominant dynamic and relationship of power between men and women. So that does mean that, in conclusion, migrant women are at the lowest in the spectrum, unfortunately. Yeah, but more so because they depend on their legal status, economic security. If they're bearing children, that creates an additional difficulty to leave a relationship if there is abuse. So, yeah, there are other layers, of course, to that question. Yeah.
And how does the idea of the expectation that men must be the main providers influence family dynamics, especially in migrant or economically vulnerable communities, as you're talking now about the woman having to rely on a man for his economical status?
So I should say, as a lawyer, I also do a lot of domestic violence cases in Malta. So I have seen a number of cases, and usually it is the female, the victim is a woman. Now, I don't want to say, because I often get told, there are also male victims. Yes, there are, but when we look at the numbers, domestic violence affects more women. Yeah, they are generally more victims that are women than men. And having looked at these cases, of course, if you are in a relationship where there is domestic violence, and let's say you are in your home country, you have hopefully a network of people that can help you, right? You would know where to go. You are speaking your own language. You know who to contact. You have perhaps family members who are there to support you. Now, if you are a migrant woman, that is much harder, especially if your legal status depends on your husband, especially if not being in that relationship means that you're going to be deported, not just, living in a shelter, not just afraid that you might be separated from your children, but there is an additional layer. There's an actual fear of deportation. Now, I've had cases where migrant women were not only in a situation where they didn't have a support system, but they also had family members abroad who actually told them that they must return to those abusive relationships. Mm-hmm. So there is added pressures when you come from certain backgrounds where it is expected from you as a woman to follow, let's say, the rules, right, of the men. And that makes it more difficult. Also, as a lawyer, when you see such vulnerable clients and you want to help them, unfortunately, it's the reality of it,
Yeah, that's quite interesting, because sometimes you'll see people saying online, why doesn't she just leave?
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's quite layered in terms of what you're talking about.
If you don't have a support system. And this is to put aside the economic aspect, the legal aspect of status. But if you don't even have your family members who are supporting you, who are telling you, come back, it's tough. It's tough,
it's
not easy.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes, like you mentioned, women might be in a position where they're told leave the children behind.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I've seen that happen, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I've seen that happen. And it's very sad. And I've seen situations, and I have one particular case in mind, which is very upsetting, where she had to leave. She decided to leave. And she was promised that her children will follow, and they never did. And it's very, very sad to see. So this wouldn't happen in the same level, like to the same number, if none of them has a migratory background, right? So it's an added layer and an added difficulty. But I also don't want to say that migrant women are just vulnerable, because I think if you just see them as people who are just vulnerable, it becomes a stereotype, right? I've seen incredible migrant women who did incredible things with or without husbands. So, so yes, I think that is something, because you also have certain strength, right, to move. I mean, I left Malta for 6 years to do my research and to finish my PhD, and it's just a glimpse of knowing what it means to go abroad without your family and your friends and your network. Now, imagine not only just migrating, but going to a completely different continent with a language you do not fully understand. It's not your native language. Not having, of course, your network system, and at the same time depending on a person who has the power in the relationship. So, of course, that creates another difficulty, but also an incredible strength for migrant women. Yes.
And what role do men play in challenging misogyny and harmful gender stereotypes, both within families and wider society? Because it's not all men who are abusive to women.
Absolutely. I think we should start by the idea that inequality is not just women's issue. It's not just a women's issue, right? It affects also men, because half of the society are women. So inequality affects, all of us. Not having women who have an equal footing affects men too. They should speak up when they see inequality, right? So I think unhealthy masculinity is problematic for women and for men, because, I mean, these men have mothers, sisters, children, daughters, right? So I think in general, the solution would be education, teaching men how to be men without thinking of, for instance, having emotions as a weakness, for instance, or accountability as a weakness, right? These are things that should be taught preferably at school, but often they are taught by the role models we have in our life, right? So the role models are obviously the strong woman in your life, but men also have an important role. And I think, the solution would be teaching boys that strength is not dominating. I think that's very important.
Thank you. Have you observed social or generational changes, particularly among younger people or migrant communities, that suggest more equal and respectful relationships are becoming possible?
Yes, I think in general, topics like shared responsibility, for instance, within the household, has become a topic that is more discussed than in the past. The idea that would be an ideal for the household, I think, is something that several years ago or decades ago would not have been imagined in any social context. So I think these are topics that are being discussed more, and just having those discussions already creates a platform where we can aim for a future of equality. Just, having the conversation. I mean, having supportive laws, education, economic security, all of these are important for the future of a healthy society. And hopefully, I mean, through education and through time, we are already seeing change. We are already seeing change. Yes.
And sometimes they talk about not listening to the woman, say she's going to a police officer, for example. And, sometimes your biases, I'm not saying all police officers are like that, where they might say, no, it's not happening like that, or you need to go back, or you mentioned family members are saying you need to stay. Is there anything you can share about, actually listening to what the woman is saying?
Yes. I get often the comment, oh, she's just crazy. She's just so emotional. And what's frustrating is this goes through society in every social class. So I'm a female lawyer. I go to court and I get sometimes the sense that male lawyers are being heard more and are not being told that they're being emotional or they're not being angry as being emotional, right? They are seen as, in a way, that they're taken more seriously. So even I, who have a background of education, I've been, both my parents have been supportive of me making my space in the world. So, and still, sometimes I get that type of reactions in a court space, in whichever workspace you are. So, yes, unfortunately, it's not something completely of the past. And migrant women are told the same type of things, that they are being too emotional. And the problem would be when they look for help and they face these type of resistance or being unheard. I have to say that today, for instance, when we talk about domestic violence, we do have a special unit within the police force. They have definitely improved in the type of training. They're more specialized in the area. But yeah, we still have a long way to go. I mean, it's whether dealing with migrants, women, or women in general, we still have to fight for our space. Yeah.
That's also very encouraging to hear that, with the civil society and communities are making these improvements to help women, because sometimes they'd be afraid to come forward because they may have experienced it before or heard somebody else saying you never listened to. So that's also quite encouraging.
Yeah.
And from your research on the overlap between legal, religious and social expectations, how do these pressures make it harder for women to seek help or assert their rights in cases of domestic violence or even discrimination?
Yes, so I mean, I think I just gave the example of being told that you're being too emotional. That is something that I've heard before, and I've heard it towards my own clients, but I've also heard it directed towards me. So I think in all the areas of life and society, there are clear stereotypes and bias towards what it means to be a woman and also what it means to be a man. And I think it is the exact type of bias that are problematic. I mean, who hasn't heard that women can't drive, right? It's when you say it, and statistics doesn't, by the way, statistics does not show that women can't drive, or that women are more emotional than men. Like, statistics show that male drivers have more accidents, that they've taken decisions, even people of power have taken many important decisions based on anger or some other form of emotion. So science does not prove these stereotypes, but they exist, right? And so breaking stereotypes, showing that things are different is actually an important role that we all have towards the new generation, right? Younger boys and girls, because we are role models at the end of the day. It's going to be replicated if we do not notice our deficiencies and try to improve. Yeah.
And lastly, my last question for you. In workplaces, women are sometimes perceived as secondary figures because of assumptions about motherhood, marriage, or caregiving responsibilities. How do these attitudes impact migrant women's professional opportunities and treatment at work?
Yes. Again, because of course, I mean, more recently there was discussions about increasing the maternity leave in Malta. Of course, when you are a woman who just gave birth and has to go back to work within few weeks because maybe you don't even have maternity leave because you have migrated to Malta and you haven't filled the legal statistics of national insurance that you need to pay, because there are all these calculations that are made. So if you don't and you give birth and then suddenly you have to go back to work within such a short span, it's difficult. So of course it makes opportunities, work opportunities less, because also employers often, I mean, legally speaking, they're not supposed to ask you, do you have plans for children? But it is taken into consideration. I'm not going to believe that employers don't look at a woman and think, this person is going to ask me for 4 months maternity leave in a few months. So the fact that you're asked, where do you see yourself as in 5 years? You can never say, well, I see myself as a mother, right? So these are realities that, of course, hit hard any woman who's trying to have a profession, who's trying to do well for herself, have a career, but more towards migrant women because of the lack of support system, which makes it more difficult, whether to go back to work or whether to actually find better opportunities. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Ibtisam, for joining us today and sharing your expertise.
Thank you very much for having me. It was really a pleasure.
And thank you for tuning in and listening and watching to us. Goodbye.
Empower to Integrate, a collaborative initiative by Aditus Foundation and the African Media Association Malta. This program is dedicated to advancing integration and social inclusion for third country nationals in Malta. It is funded by the Asylum, Migration and Integration Fund, co-funded by the European Union and carried out in collaboration with the Parliamentary Secretariat for European Funds.